Okay, a bit of background here, because this is going to be the first of 3 videos on this. The other 2 are already in the can, if a hard drive classifies as a can. I'm not quite sure. I've had a few exchanges over PM. I've mentioned it in the video, I've mentioned it in comments a few times. I've seen other people mention it. You can't help but notice, if you've been on YouTube in these kind of parts, watching the kind of crap that I produce, or similar crap, but not necessarily produced by me, but to do with atheism and religion and ethics and all this kind of bullshit. If you're interested in that kind of thing, you cannot help but notice that things have become, drama aside, somewhat less interesting and somewhat less substantial. There just seems to be less people and less people of renown doing anything. Quite a lot of well-established YouTubers have either fallen silent or left the YouTubes, and they've not been replaced. And I see this as a bit of a problem. I think it's made the whole experience less vibrant, less vigorous, and it's something that I've bemoaned. Now Thunderfoot is bemoaning this, but he's not a lazy twat like me who just sits there moaning about it. For all his faults, he is the kind of proactive person who at least tries to do something about things. So what I would say is, if you are like-minded, regardless of what you think of Thunderfoot, this is perhaps something to get behind. You may have heard him talk about this already. If you haven't, you may have read him on his WordPress account talking about it. I'll link to it. What he said is something here. Let me tell you what he's written here. Regrettably, the secular rationalist community is a problem on YouTube at the moment. Established players have been slowly drifting away, and because the barriers to entry are so high, they are not being replaced. The way I see it, we want people making good videos on a semi-regular basis, but how to encourage this? I am going to put, but not me, him, I'll just hasten to add, I am going to put basically all of the donations I received from last year into a fund to encourage this. About $10,000 he's talking about to try and encourage people to make videos on YouTube. Now, in this part of YouTube, it has to be said, atheists to make videos critiquing, you know, typical theological arguments, that kind of thing. So this is the thing then. He asked if anybody had any ideas. There's quite a few people have put ideas on there. If you have any ideas, or you'd like to think if there's any way you could get involved in advocating other channels, if you have any significant number of subscribers, one way you can get involved is simply by giving people shout outs, giving people channels that you regard as worth it, giving them an extra little foot up. I think a lot of that has stopped. That is something we could all do more of, including myself. If you have any other ideas, have a read of his blog at the WordPress thing. One thing that cropped up there that I've also heard other people ask before is this idea of not really knowing where to get started, being a little bit scared of how to get started, etc. Let me say right here and now that making videos on YouTube is a good crack. It really is, and it's nowhere near as intimidating as you think it is going to be. Mainly because when you first start, nobody will give a shit about what you are doing, which is actually a good thing in many ways. And most people, as long as you're reasonably polite with them, I can think of the odd, one particular exception actually.
This YouTube anti-natalism fad has rotted down to a loon in a shed, calling the world a bunch of cunt weasels.
Yeah, okay, that was the individual that I was thinking of on this occasion. But most people aren't like that. Most people will be quite reasonable with you if you're reasonable with them. There really is very few barriers to getting involved. If I could encourage a handful of people to get involved, I would be absolutely delighted. And on the back of that, and on the back of some of these comments that I've read about, well, how do you get started? How do you edit a video together? What are a few tips on how to start? My knowledge is limited, but as much as I do know, I thought, well, why don't I just run through what I do? So I've made 2 videos. This is 3 videos. This is part 1. Part 3, why is he telling me part 3 first? I'll tell you why in a minute. Part 3 is going to be video, just me giving a few sort of tips and my views on the best way of starting a channel off. What I know now, perhaps that I didn't know when I'd started. So just a little talk there. Part 2 is going to be me editing the video that becomes part 3, so that you can see just how simple it is just to splice a few little bits of video together and then get it off there to YouTube and get it out there. If that's of any use to somebody, if that encourages anybody to make a video, then marvellous. I just ask whatever you think of Thunderfoot. If you think that this section of YouTube isn't what it was, and you think that there is a possibility that we could kind of get things back up a little bit more, have a look at the WordPress blog there, and if you've any thoughts, add them, and do what you can. Okay, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Other than perhaps the one thing you need if you're going to make video YouTubes is some boring phrase that you put on every single fucking video you make. So here's mine. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.